Grove Unleashed.
Hey, welcome to another edition of Grove Unleashed. This is State Representative Seth Grove. As always, I'm joined by the Anders.
What's happening?
And our awesome producer, Chuck.
In the house.
In his house. Great to be with you. It's been a little while.
It's been too long. Where have we been?
I don't know. It's just been busy. We've tried scheduling these, but every time something pops up. So the struggle's been real.
It's the liberals trying to keep us from the people. The liberals are trying to stop the message from coming out.
Right, because we were scheduled on a session day. It's supposed to be a quick session day, and it went long.
Yeah.
Here and I was going to say that it was because we were busy working on the unfinished budget.
We'll get into that.
Yeah.
Still not done.
I mean, regardless, it all has to do with Democrat leadership or lack thereof,
right.
Really. I mean, it's nobody knows at all what's going on in the House when Democrats are in charge.
Right.
So,
speaking of Democrats being in charge of the House and elections recently, has that changed anything?
Yeah, so obviously we spent a lot of time on this podcast talking about elections. It's important. It's the foundation of our entire governmental system. And again, we're still dealing with the stuff we've been dealing with forever, with mail-in ballots and elections and court cases. And here we are again, back in court on undated ballots. It's a federal court case out west. These, quote, voting rights groups. This is their third or fourth try at throwing out state law on elections. They tried it in the Eastern District a few years ago. We know how that worked. So now they're doing it again in Western District. At some point, why don't we just get an agreement on election code changes in a bipartisan way and fix the law instead of these, quote, voting rights groups whose only job is to disenfranchise legal voters by allowing fraudulent votes. That's all they want to do, or illegal votes. Continue to go through these court cases.
well, I think you answered the question right there.
Right.
Because it would have to be the Democrats doing a bipartisan bill.
Right. Which they're obviously not interested in.
Yeah.
Right.
The effect of this, too, is that we end up with people, once again, questioning the elections,
Right.
doubting things. It drags this out, and everyone's doubting things for...
Right. Uncertainty of counties. So this court ruling comes out in western Pennsylvania, a western federal court district. Does that apply to the rest of the state? Does it apply to the rest of the country? How is York County supposed to count their ballots based on a 2022 court case from a 2022 election here in 2023? Right? And that is the entire problem in Pennsylvania, summing up. We're heading into another presidential election with basically the same laws that were in place during the 2020 election. It is a problem. There's a lot of issues that need resolved. They've been highlighted by counties, by legislation, and the only thing we got from the House Democrat leadership was gamemanship. They couldn't even change the date of the primary. It was so bad. The primary date next year's over Passover. It's a Jewish holiday. The individuals in the Jewish faith asked for it to be moved. Why? Because we use JCCs, Jewish community centers. We use synagogues as places to do polling. Well, we lose that ability. There's individuals who don't want to do mail-in vote, who want to show up, but aren't going to show up on their high holiday because it's not allowed. And the House Democrats botched it up so bad because they wanted to play political games and jam up Republicans on votes rather than solving a real problem. And that's what we've been dealing with for a year now.
Yeah, that's a theme. The Democrats not getting stuff done here in the House. Right. We've been historically bad at getting things done, historically lazy almost might be a way to describe it, or just historically late in achieving absolutely anything in the House. And that leads us to talking about the budget.
Mm-hmm.
You're the appropriations chair for the Republicans. Let's try to break this down into what the budget actually is, because there seems to be a lot of discussion on, is the budget done, is it not? Yes, certain bills are passed, but it's more than one bill. Talk to us in layman's terms. What really is encompassed in the budget?
Yeah, there's multiple pieces of a budget in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. So you have the big bill, the general appropriations bill. That's the bulk of your state spending. That is complete. That was signed into law late.
So what does that bill specifically do, though?
That is just numbers agencies, line items, and numbers. That's all it is.
So
It
essentially,
says-
that says
basically it provides the highest legal amount a state agency can spend.
Okay.
That's the max. They can always spend less. But that sets the limit, and it provides the legal framework for the treasurer to then agencies submit payments, and the treasurer can pay. Without that document, the treasurer can't make payments. So that is done. The bulk of the budget is done because of that. Now, there's what's called trailer bills, and then there's kind of like follow-up bills too. So the PUC's budget is not in the general appropriations bill. So we have to do a separate budget for the PUC. We have to do a separate budget for a couple other state agencies. There's about 8 of those we have to do. So we're looking at 9 bills so far, right? We have the non-preferreds. That could be anywhere between 1 bill or
the non-preferreds being state-related universities.
state-related universities, generally money for students. So it would cover University of Pennsylvania's veterinary school students, Pitt, Temple, Lincoln, Penn State. It would cover those 5. So you could have 5 separate, or they've been jammed together in one bill, right? And then you have what's called the code bills. The code bills are critically important because they limit what the state agencies can spend for. It's really a very pro-legislative power to go and say, you state agency, well, we approve you to spend up to $20 million. This is how you can or cannot use that $20 million.
It's directing the spending that was engaged in that first bill.
Correct. So that could be a fiscal code, education code, admin code, tax code if you want to change tax policy, human services code. So that's 5 more bills. So you're looking at a multitude of bills that need to be put in place to execute a full budget.
And how many of these are done?
So, to be honest, the bulk of them are done, right? So the general appropriations bill is done. The kind of follow-up bills for the PUC, all the state agency bills are done. The human services code is done, which is critically important because it provided money for hospitals. We had what's called the hospital assessment. We basically pull money from hospitals, federalize it, do matching funds, and then give it right back to hospitals. It's kind of like money laundering that the feds have approved over the years. But it provides substantial, like $2 to $3 billion for hospitals in the Commonwealth to do that. That's done because if that expires, we would have had hospitals close in this Commonwealth. So critically important to do. That was a really, really big thing to do. Everything else is done. Now, an admin code and a tax code, you don't need to do. Unless you're changing things in the administrative code, like how agencies function and stuff, you don't need an admin code. If you're not changing tax policy to cut taxes, create a new tax credit, or raise taxes, you don't need a tax code. So those things have kind of fallen off the table. No one wants to get into them. So the big 2 that are left is the education code and the fiscal code. The fiscal code is the big one. That is the one that sets formulas and directs how agencies spend money. And there's 2 portions of that. There's a permanent section, and then there's a temporary section. So the state agencies, the governor's office, the budget office, can look at the fiscal code and say, okay, anything in the permanent section we can send out because it's permanent. The temporary section was based on last year's budget. So it expired June 30th at midnight.
Of
All
2023.
Of 2023. All that expired. So if you're wrapped in the temporary, you can't get any money.
For 6 months now.
Correct. For 6 months. It's not going out.
Now, what are programs that would be included in each one, just for examples?
Tobacco settlement. A lot of that money goes to fund cancer research centers for cancer. That money is not going out right now.
Okay.
That's frozen. There's an issue because last year's budget combined 2 education lines. This year's budget separated them back out. There's an internal problem of sending part of that out because the budget's not predicated on those changes. So there needs to be a fix for that for school districts. The bulk of their funding's out, so I'm not overly worried about that small component. And to combine, there's about $1.1 billion of spending. Now, on top of all of this, the executive branch, for the first time ever, issued a letter concerning a proposed school choice program that the Senate Republicans negotiated with the governor. It was used to be called the Lifeline Scholarships. It's called PASS, P-A-S-S now. The House Democrats asked the Office of General Counsel, the governor's attorneys, and said, if there is, this is a new program, line item in the budget, if there's no fiscal code language to execute that line item, can it be spent? OGC came back and said, no. You need to have programmatic language to allocate those funds, because they'll just be sitting there and there's no way to direct it. And what they have basically said is, General Assembly, you can appropriate whatever you want. The executive branch can't spend it unless you tell them how to spend it. This is the first time in history this has ever been done. Former budget secretary I talked to was like, I can't believe they were that dumb and did that, gave that much executive authority away from the General Assembly.
That's huge.
It is big. So as we're going through this and the budget's not getting done, and the governor backtracked on his negotiation, ended up vetoing something he's advocated for both as a governor and as a candidate, and that's a school choice program, the PASS program. He ended up line item veto that. But at the same time, he had the budget secretary send a memo to the Senate saying all these new programs that are built in the budget, whether they were a federal program that we're adding state money to or is new in the budget, can't be funded until a fiscal code is done, basically back in the OGC language. So that's, you're looking at dollars for school districts, the community colleges. We're supposed to get a 2% increase. That 2%'s frozen. They can't get it because they need a new fiscal. So all this language is still being held up. We are heading into December. December is the midpoint of your fiscal year. 6 months in, we don't have a completed budget. $1.1 billion is still sitting on the side. We have the governor's budget address coming up in February. We have a special election for House seat. We have a House Democrat resigning, so we're going to be at 101. And you can't have call a new special election to fill that seat until the person resigns. It's minimum of 60 days. So you're looking at March or April
to finish a budget for the previous year.
Correct.
When you'll actually be working on the one for the next year.
Correct. So that's where House Democrat leadership, and when we were in session last week, we tried to get an education code done. The Senate sent language for the EITC, OSTC.
And what is that?
So that is another school program for school choice. It's our premier school choice program. It's significant dollars for kids to go to a school of their choice, income set, and then the OSTC programs for students who are in the worst 15% of the failing schools to go to another school. Great program. It's built on tax credit, so all these schools have to go to a local business, knock on their door and say, hey, would you apply for this tax credit and directly send it to our school so we can get pay for scholarships for kids.
Gotcha. What's the holdup on that? Why?
So that's normally a large bipartisan. Like that is a non-controversial program. Everybody loves it. It's great. No complaints. The Senate sent it over within an education code bill, 45-5. 45 senators passed it. 5 senators didn't. 1 Republican, 4 Democrats. And 1 Republican voted no, not because of the school choice program. He had other issues with it. Broad bipartisan support. The governor sent out a tweet. I'm going to be signing the education code this week. The majority leader, Matt Bradford, got it in his rules committee, stripped the EITC program out, and then passed it back to the Senate.
Why do Democrats hate children? Why do why do Democrats hate schools that aren't publicly
I don't.
It just baffles me.
So I don't know if it is a Southeast Democrat issue where they don't want minority kids from failing schools in Philadelphia going to their schools.
And I don't know. It just blows my mind that these Democrats.
Right, and that's the kicker. When the Senate was talking about pass, all the Democrats were, well, let's just do an increase in EITC instead of doing the pass. Well, here you have it. There's an increase in the EITC program, OSTC program. That's what you said you wanted back in June. Now you have it in November, months later, and you shoot that down, which means they're not serious. They don't want to govern. They don't want a completed budget. They want an impasse, and it's all politics. They do not care about people. They care about power and control, and that's all we are seeing in the House.
Really, the only reason I can think of for them to not want these school choice programs is because they are beholden to these teachers unions. That's the only thing I can think of. Even though these bills don't take money away from public schools.
Correct.
And this is actually a running theme. It's not just it's not just the EITC OSTC thing. This is going back into other education things. It bleeds back into the fight that we had over the non-preferreds and all the college funding. It doesn't seem like Democrats want to prioritize. They talk about education funding, but they only want to do it when it benefits somebody who has essentially it's a special interest thing.
So what there was a huge fight then on the higher education bills, the colleges, and so there was a version of it that went out of the House, and then there was another version that's kind of signed into law. Can you get into what you guys were able to get through real Republican leadership actually leading,
right,
and versus what then the Senate then compromised on and what was signed into law?
So higher ed is interesting because there's there's four buckets, right? You have the PASHE schools, right? They're the state-owned universities. They're part of the general appropriations bill. We fund them, so their funding was taken care of when we passed that. You have the community colleges. They're in the general appropriations bill. They are funded outside of their 2% increase because they need a formula change in the fiscal code. So they got all their money but the 2% increase. You have the A-Cup schools, the independents. They get zero direct dollars. They rely on PASHE grants. So they get no money. They educate 51% of the students in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. They hold the line. They do a great job of educating kids, constantly changing up their majors to meet the jobs of tomorrow because they want people to graduate and have jobs. Like they prioritize. They love the talking point of 96, 97, 98% of our students have jobs when they graduate. Like that's what you want. They prioritize. They want you gone in 4 years.
That's the whole purpose of getting a degree.
They don't want you gone. They want you working in 4 years.
Graduated with a degree and working in 4 years, right? And then the last one are called the non-preferreds, the state-relateds. So that's Pitt, Penn State, Temple, and Lincoln. They are the large. So Penn State's allocation that we give them annually is more than the General Assemblies. Just to give you a perspective about how much money these state-relateds get. Penn State alone gets more money than the operation of a branch of government. To put that in perspective. So because they're non-preferred, because we're giving a direct appropriation to a nonprofit entity, it requires a 2/3 vote of the General Assembly. 2/3. High benchmark, right? So it is also a leverage point. So coming into budget negotiations, House Republicans, we're in the minority. You need our votes to pass the non-preferreds.
And it's always a leverage point for the minority party. Always, every
Correct.
year.
Correct. So we came in and said, this is what we want. We want a seat at the budget table. We want a tuition freeze for students because tuition's too damn high. We want a freeze.
And that's what the trade-off is, right? The state gives these schools money, and in return, they give Pennsylvania residents decreased tuition.
We want the state-relateds put under the right-to-know law. We want more transparency and accountability. And we want to start funding students, not institutions. Those were our four big asks. As the budget process went on, we were not included in the budget conversations at all. So nothing you can do about that. Budget passed. You don't need 2/3 vote for the budget. It's a straight, you just need 102, constitutional minimum, 102 votes. You get your 102, you can do whatever you want. Budget passed, was done. We still had these non-preferred. So Democrats wanted to bring it up and jam us up. And we were just like, let's have a conversation. Let's talk about these non-preferreds. Finally, in July, a month, it wasn't maybe half a month after the fiscal year ended, It was the first time the majority leader came to House Republicans and said, "What do you guys want? We've got to delete these. What do you guys want?" And we told them, "We're not doing that."
Yeah.
So they made a vote and they want to go beat us up. Oh, Republicans are holding up student funding, blah, blah, blah. The problem is we were right. That's what people want. They want to hear our arguments of holding tuition. If we're going to give you hundreds of millions of taxpayer dollars, we expect you to hold the line. And we were successful. We got Pitt and Penn State to do one of the lowest tuition increases on main campus. They froze tuition for their branch campuses. So all those kids going to branch campuses are not going to see a tuition increase thanks to House Republicans. Temple did a smaller increase than they were planning on. That was 4% higher than Pitt and Penn State. But ultimately, it was very successful. We did pass Lincoln's because they do something really cool. So when you start there as a freshman, you get a tuition increase, right? You don't really, it's just your base. So they increase, but you're locked into that rate for the next 3 years.
Gotcha.
So, like,
No surprises.
Right, no surprises. That is what you're locked in. You can plan, you know how much it is. We thought that was a great way. While it's not a hard tuition freeze, they're looking after their students through the 4 years. And we appreciated that, and we rewarded Lincoln on that by passing that with broad bipartisan support. So finally, in September, October, the House Democrats finally moved Kate Klunk's right to know bill. That's over in the Senate, standalone bill. So we're moving through
What's
that process.
in that bill?
So that basically requires because they're getting state dollars, the state relators are kind of under right to know, but it's very weak. So we add more financial transparency to them. They have to report their annual financial reports. They have to open up their books. They have to report on, if anybody does a right to know request, they have to supply the financial documents. So if you want to know what they're spending these tax dollars on, they have to let you know. By the way, whether it's the direct non-preferred tuition or other dollars they might get from taxpayers, they have to respond on that.
If you want taxpayer dollars, you got to open the books.
Correct. So very powerful, and it's a starting point, right?
Mm-hmm.
So now you get the financial details of what we've been asking for, and you have a higher level of accountability for these institutions. That ended up getting signed into law. Major win. Representative Kate Klunk from York County was the prime sponsor of that. Her and Ryan Warner worked on that for a number of years, so I'm really glad that happened. So huge win for House Republicans. It was one of our focal points to get done this year.
Huge win for the students of Pennsylvania.
Right.
Yeah.
So tuition freeze, right to know, check. House Democrats trying to jam us up actually introduced a bill to get rid of the 2/3 and do a grant program. Direct funding for students through a grant program. Something else we've been trying to get done. So another huge step for us. That's another huge win for our position where we've been negotiating it. And it finally came to the point where it's, end of October, beginning of November. We just, we got the wins we could, right? We got RTK, we got tuition freezes, we got the House Democrats for the first time ever to convert the non-appropriated into a grant program so we can start funding students. All huge wins. We're advancing the ball. It was time to settle it and move on. So the Senate sent over a bill that was flat funded, didn't have a mandated tuition freeze in it. We also got I did forget this. The House Democrats did accept the amendment for a hard freeze next session or next school year for a hard tuition freeze for all students. All students.
That's awesome.
In-state and out-of-state.
That's good.
All students across the board. Graduate students, all students.
And that's
And
good
it's
for
all because
Pennsylvania
of-
colleges drawing students from out of state.
Right. Wide bipartisan pass. Now, part of that is we accepted their higher funding level because we're still in this budget, right?
Mm-hmm.
So Democrats wanted a 7% increase. Senate Republicans wanted flat funding. Ultimately, it was flat funding outside of the Penn College for Technology got an increase, and then Lincoln got an increase with the RTK bill. So all in all, huge wins for our caucus in taking that to a point. The funding's done, and it was a big fight over a couple of years. We never backed down. We held to our beliefs. But at the end of the day, we still have to govern. Like,
The one thing you said on the House floor that I thought was really summed up the problem with Democrat leadership in the House. And what you said was passing bills through the House is not governing.
Right.
Getting them signed into laws is. And I think that is huge, something that the Democrats have yet to realize. And I think it's also crazy to see how even though we are in the minority, it is our leadership that in the end are making these huge differences for Pennsylvanians everywhere.
Right. And it shows when you have the conversation, you can get stuff done.
Yeah.
I work with Jordan Harris. He didn't really call it, but I thought it was a good idea. He didn't talk to me about it. He did a bill to increase nonprofit security grants. I like it because it's been successful. Both school security grants and nonprofit security grants, when we started doing it, we don't have mass shootings in schools and nonprofits because we help them secure harden their facilities. What we saw from the Tennessee shooter at that Christian school, that shooter went to another school. It was a hard target. They ended up going to a secondary, a soft. So we do something that's successful, and someone who supports the Second Amendment, that works. Well, I know gun control doesn't work. Look at Chicago, look at Philadelphia, like all these gun control areas or areas where we don't want people to have guns. Criminals still get them, and they'll still kill people. Areas like York with high percentage of firearm ownership and can still carry, lower crime rates. It's a fact.
Let's find a solution that's constitutional and works.
Correct. And that's what we did. As soon as I saw it, I'm like, yeah, let's do this. This is a good use of taxpayer money that protects kids, protects families, protects Pennsylvanians, and works. We know it works. We've seen it work.
And it's crazy because it seems like most of the solutions when it comes to gun violence, the things that do work are the ones that are constitutional.
Correct.
So just a couple other things that we want to update you guys on. Representative Grove will be doing a teletown hall with Representative Kate Klunk on December 15th. Be sure to check out the social media for both him and Representative Klunk to get more details on that. Anything else you want to, any dad advice for the viewers? Anything else?
That advice. Christmas is coming up. Don't slack off. Get out there early. I used to be a December 24th shopper. It's not easy. It's not fun. So get out there, get shopping. A lot of cool activities out there. Check out your townships.
And to finish off the episode, we got fake news.
Fake news.
So
That sounds fake to me.
yeah, well, for the new viewers, what this is I will give you guys 2 articles. You have to figure out if it's real or if it's fake. Article number 1: Target releases trans Muslim Chinese quadruple amputee Santa figurine.
Say that again.
Target releases trans Muslim Chinese quadruple amputee Santa.
I'm going to go with that's real.
I have to say, not real sounds too much like a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle.
All right. Well, here I'll give you one hint. I'm going to give you the other article here, and then maybe this will help you decide one's real, one's fake. All right. Here's the next one. Florida Roofing Company offering free AR-15 and turkey with purchase of a new roof.
Oh.
I say that's real.
I say that one's real.
And
So-
the other one's fake?
I'm gonna have to go with that. Now, tell me we're wrong.
Yep, you guys are correct. It's a Cape Coral Roofing Company is offering a free AR-15 and turkey with the
Do they
purchase
do
of
they
new
do
roof.
roofs in Pennsylvania?
You know what's funny? When the article, this was reported by CBS 21 out of Harrisburg, and a lot of the comments were asking exactly that question.
Do they?
Grove Unleashed.